Xbox Game Pass is nothing short of amazing, and that's why I actually had to make 2 separate videos highlighting some of the best games available in Xbox Game Pass as of right now. In my last video, I focused on the top 25 Xbox Game Pass games, and I realized there was no possible way for me to talk about every game that I think deserves some attention. So I decided to split the 2 videos up and focus on some smaller games that are among the very best. This is actually one of my favorite things about Xbox Game Pass because you can discover new and great games that you might not have tried otherwise. So today I got a list of 15 different games for you to go check out in Xbox Game Pass. Of course, don't forget to watch the top 25 Xbox Game Pass video later for even more games, and if I don't mention one of your favorite games here, there is a possibility that I talk about that in my other video. With that said, let's get right into it. At number 15, I have Gris, which right away you probably realize just how beautiful this game is. It's stunning to look at with its unique art style, but don't let that fool you. It also plays beautifully with wonderful platforming. Gris takes you on an emotional journey where oftentimes its narrative is told through striking visuals. See, stories aren't always told through words and dialogue, and Gris kind of proves that in a very mesmerizing and beautiful way. It's not an overly long game, but from beginning to end, it's an enjoyable experience that I would highly recommend. Now, if you're looking for a nice cooperative game to play with your friends, Deep Rock Galactic is a pleasant surprise. It's got a pleasing, simplistic art style to it, and I believe it's quietly one of the best cooperative experiences on the market right now. I really don't know why more people aren't talking about this game, but if you like Minecraft or Left 4 Dead, this is the best of both worlds. You play as dwarves with their own unique abilities, travel to mysterious planets to collect minerals, all while destroying grotesque swarms of bugs. The mechanics work great, the abilities are fun, and they work well in unison with your partners as well. Again, if you're looking for a game to play with your friends, you're not going to find much better than Deep Rock Galactic. Next up, I have New Super Lucky's Tale, which is perfect for fans of old mascot platformers that was ever so popular during the Nintendo 64 era. That's one of my favorite consoles of all time, and when I first played New Super Lucky's Tale, I immediately was drawn to this game. It's a good collectathon 3D platformer with a lot of heart and charming personality. It's also a game that can be fun for the entire family. I feel like we don't really get enough good 3D collectathon platformers anymore, but luckily, New Super Lucky's Tale brings that experience to Xbox Game Pass. Greedfall is one of those games that's been massively overlooked. Greedfall is a big RPG built by a smaller studio, and for that reason, it's not always the most polished. What it lacks in polish, though, it more than makes up for with a lot of heart. It plays kind of similar to older Western RPGs. A lot of people specifically mention BioWare when talking about Greedfall, and I can completely understand why. It's got an engaging, complex story, dialogue trees, plenty of exploration, and interesting companions that takes the journey with you. If you like those type of RPGs or games with an interesting story and a good cast of characters, Greedfall is certainly worth picking up. Next up, I have Superland, and the developers explain this game as being a mix of Zelda, Portal, and Metroid. I mean, you're talking about 3 of the best games of all time, so that's quite the comparison, yet you can definitely tell it was inspired by those games. Superland is a 3D Metroidvania with plenty of platforming, puzzle solving, and new abilities that consistently changes the gameplay. I think it does all 3 of these things with great success, and growing up with games like this is the perfect game for me. I think for any gamer who grew up playing these type of games, you're going to be in for a real treat with Superland. If I had to sum this game up though, I would say it's just simply fun. I was really surprised by some of the critical reception for Journey to the Savage Planet when it released early in 2020. I really like this game, and it has a lot going for it. It's a first-person adventure game where you go to this hostile planet with very little resources, but as you explore, you gain new abilities to further progress into its mysterious world. The art style of this game is colorful and vibrant, and it's got some mesmerizing alien locations as you journey across its hostile planet. It's also a very humorous game, has surprisingly good platforming, and it's just fun to explore. I would have enjoyed more variety in creatures, but another thing that gets overlooked is that it's a great cooperative game. So if you're looking for a game to play with a friend, try out Journey to the Savage Planet. Hotshot Racing is a perfect example of great art style. Over the years, certain games have aged incredibly well, such as pixel art, or in this case, a simplistic polygon look inspired by Virtua Racer. It surprisingly looks striking to this day, and beyond that, Hotshot is a very fun arcade-style game. And actually, I think it's quietly one of the best arcade racing games in recent memory. It doesn't revolutionize the genre or anything, but it's got nice tight controls and fun mechanics such as boosting and drifting. You also have several game modes such as the Grand Prix, Drive or Explode, Cops and Robbers, and your usual time trials. If you enjoy old school 90s style racing games such as Ridge Racer, Daytona USA, or Virtua Racer, then Hotshot Racing is a must play. A lot of the times when you think about something that's Lovecraftian inspired, you expect dark, grotesque alien-like creatures with a gothic-esque art style, but Call of the Sea is something just a bit different. This is a stunning game visually with a more vibrant and colorful world. It's the exact opposite of what you would expect, and that's a refreshing take on the Lovecraftian subgenre. It also has a deep, emotionally engaging story with plenty of mystery, the puzzles never hold your hand and are very rewarding, and the narration is done exceptionally well. Call of the Sea kind of reminds me of games like Firewatch, and that's a great game to be compared to. These games aren't meant for everybody as they're a little bit slower paced, but still amazing at what it does. Dark Souls has inspired a whole new genre of games, and year in and year out there's always a few Dark Souls inspired games. Most of them have been fairly run-of-the-mill, but one that really stands out is Remnant from the Ashes, and a big part of that is because it's unique in its own way. It's not just some copycat or anything like that, and in fact, it focuses more on being a third-person shooter, and a really good one at that. The combat is phenomenal with a weighty feel to each weapon, and as you'd expect, more than a little challenging. Now there's also melee weapons in Remnant, and it offers a nice mix of both. It never feels stale in terms of gameplay. Just prepare yourself for a challenge and you're in for a real treat with Remnant from the Ashes. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always enjoyed beat-em-up style games and their arcade-like romps. You can just play them again and again, and they never get old, especially if you play them cooperatively with a friend. Well, River City Girls is probably one of my favorite beat-em-up games of all time. It ranks right up there with Castle Crashers, Battletoads, and Streets of Rage. These type of games don't always get the attention that they deserve, and critics don't always seem to love them, but River City Girls is nothing short of fun. It's got a really interesting old school art style to it, the story is absolutely crazy, and the gameplay is top of its class. The way it works is that you unlock moves as you play through the story by paying in-game money for them. This makes your combos a lot more complex as you play through the game. As I mentioned, the story's pretty crazy though. I think it's a fun story, but do keep in mind it doesn't take itself too serious. Now, Katana Zero is an absolute blast. That's the first thing you need to know about this game. You play as an assassin, and one hit equals one kill. With each stage, it's almost like solving a fast-paced, complex puzzle. Maybe a dash and roll here, use some stealth there, or even reflect bullets towards the numerous enemies in your way. You also have a slowdown mechanic for especially tricky situations, though you might want to use that sparingly. Surprisingly though, Katana Zero has a good story as well. That's something you wouldn't expect from a game like this, but Katana Zero is the whole package. If anything, it's one of the better independent games available not only in Xbox Game Pass, but on the entire market. Another extremely fun independent game is The Messenger. In many ways, The Messenger is a tale of two. It has this interesting mechanic where you can time travel and play in two entirely different dimensions. In one dimension, you play in an 8-bit era, while the other, it's in 16-bit. Both the music and visuals change to fit the era. That's a clever take on time traveling and how they intertwine the art style with game history. It's also a mix of a 2D action platformer similar to games like Ninja Gaiden, but then transforms into more of a Metroidvania-style game. However, it does both masterfully, and I can't say enough good about The Messenger. Now this next one is one of the more emotionally driven games that you're going to play. Spiritfarer's premise is about death and moving on. Death is never an easy thing to deal with, and Spiritfarer handles this situation very well. It's often bittersweet, and as you help the different creatures move on to the afterlife, it's the bond that you build with each character that sticks in your mind long after you finish up the game. I know it looks cute on the surface with its animal-like creatures, but it does have a mature theme to it, and its narrative is one that you won't forget anytime soon. Now, beyond its narrative, I think it's a good game as well. It's a management sim, and there are a lot of things to do within its wonderful world, whether it be fishing, platforming, or various other activities. It always keeps you entertained. The Metroidvania genre has absolutely exploded in the last few years with heavy hitters such as Hollow Knight and Ori. These are considered to be some of the all-time greats by this point, but I also think Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is right there alongside them, and for good reason. Bloodstained is a spiritual successor to the legendary 2D Castlevania series. In fact, Bloodstained was developed by Koji Igarashi, the creative mind behind Castlevania. So clearly he knows what he's doing with these type of games, and it really shows. The combat, the atmosphere, the exploration, and just absolutely everything feels so perfect in Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. There's an abundance of weapons and abilities to play around with, the boss encounters are fantastic, and just from beginning to end, this is an incredible game. It may be a love letter to games of the past, but I should also make it clear that it's brilliant for today's standards as well. And at the number 1 spot, I have a game that really took me by surprise, and that's Crosscode. I was not expecting this game to be nearly as good as what it is, but I came away extremely impressed. This may be a smaller independent game, but it's a big RPG rivaling some of the all-time greats. Basically, Crosscode ties in its story to its gameplay in an absolutely brilliant way. So essentially, you play as a character who is stuck in a virtual MMO world. I won't get into the reasons as to why, but the story is actually really good. The creators somehow managed to make a single-player game with NPCs feel as a living, breathing MMO, and I have to really applaud them for that. It's kind of got a similar premise to Ready Player One or Sword Art Online, but the story itself is different and interesting enough to stand out. And then there's the gameplay, and even though I praise the story a lot, the gameplay is just as good. It offers a lot of choice as you'd expect with an RPG. As you level up, you take several branching paths and how you build your character, and I have to say, the abilities are some of my favorites in games like this. The combat is insanely fun and also challenging. You're really going to have to make the best of your abilities with some of the stronger enemies in this game. It also has Zelda-esque dungeons with clever puzzles. I mean, this game just has layer after layer, and in all facets, it's outstanding. If you haven't played this game yet, do yourself a favor and check Crosscode out. Anyways though, that's it for this list, but if I missed any game you believe deserves to be here, make sure to let me know in the comments below. With that said, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.